Hello and welcome back to Simple Money Podcast, Canada's own personal finance podcast that presents personal finance issues in short and informative episodes. I'm your host, Matthew Seawick, also known as the Friendly Financial Coach. Today we explore in detail the newly launched First-Time Homebuyers Incentive Program and what we think about it. The program launches later this year on September 2nd, 2019, and properties must close on November 1st or afterwards. The goal of this program is to offer support for first-time homebuyers looking to buy a property in Canada. To support the homebuyers, CMHC would contribute 5 or 10% of the purchase price and retain the equivalent equity ownership in the property. So for example, if CMHC contributed 5% towards the purchase, then they would have 5% equity ownership in the property itself. The big benefit of this program is that the incentive would act as an additional 5 or 10% on top of the down payment. So for example, your down payment would effectively be 15% if you had a 10% down payment with an incentive bonus of 5%. This down payment would then reduce the CMHC fees and would also reduce the size of the mortgage required, which would also effectively reduce mortgage interest and payments. Unfortunately, this program also comes with some serious downsides, ones that we will explore later in this episode. So let's dive into the details now and get a little bit technical. Home buyers are able to receive an incentive of 5% when they purchase a resale home, or 10% for purchases of new builds. There are also quite a few borrower qualifications that also must be met. Household income must be under $120,000, and the total amount of borrowing cannot exceed 4 times this amount, which equates to a maximum of $480,000. This maximum amount includes the mortgage itself and the homebuyer's incentive, but does not include any CMHC fees. So for example, if a household has a combined eligible income of $100,000, then the maximum mortgage and incentive that they can receive is $400,000. The minimum down payment that can be made follows typical rules, where for any property that's under $500,000, a down payment of at least 5% must be made, and any portion above $500,000 to $1 million is 10%. However, as we'll discuss later, this program caps out at about $564,000. The first charge mortgage must be over 80% and CMHC insured. This means that the maximum down payment must be just under 10 or 15% depending on the incentive received. The minimum down payments are also required to come from traditional sources like personal savings or investments, RSPs, and non-repayable gifts from family members. Excluded funding comes from unsecured loans or lines of credit. Overall, the maximum eligible purchase price for a property is about $564,000 for households that have eligible income of $120,000. The amount then decreases when a household earns under that. And this brings us to our first issue. This program will mostly benefit Canadians that live outside of regions with high house prices. Real estate data shows us the average home in Canada is just over $500,000. In major city centers like Toronto, the average house price is just under $800,000. So as you can see, this program will benefit Canadians in certain regions of Canada. So to qualify, at least one of the borrowers must qualify as a first-time homebuyer. So there are a couple different ways that you could qualify as a first-time homebuyer. Number one being that you've never purchased a home before. Also, if in the last 4 years you did not occupy a home that you or your current spouse or common law partner owned. This 4-year period begins on January 1st of the 4th year before the year that you purchased your home. It ends 31 days before the date that you purchase your new home. Individuals that have also gone through a breakdown of marriage or common law partnership, even if they would typically not have qualified as a first-time homebuyer, can also qualify under certain circumstances. The eligible property itself must also be 1 to 4 units, be in Canada, and suitable for all-year residency, meaning that seasonal properties like cottages will not qualify. And of course, borrowers will also need to qualify for their mortgages. So once you qualify for the program, you will eventually need to pay back the incentive. The amount that you owe is the CMHC equity ownership percentage multiplied by the market value of the property at the time of calculation. So for example, if you received an incentive of 10% and the market value of the property was $700,000 when you disposed of it, you would be required to pay back $70,000 at the time of sale. Repayment can be triggered at the earliest of 3 different periods. either through voluntary repayment, when you sell the property, or in 25 years. And this brings us to one of my biggest concerns. If a household resides in a property for over 25 years, then they will be required to make a very large payment when it's due. To give a hypothetical example, say that we have a situation where there's a new build and the purchase price is $400,000. This household then decides to hold on the property for over 25 years. The incentive would be $40,000 at the time of purchase. So this would have been how much they would have received. Say that this property increases by 5% per year on average over 25 years. After 25 years, this property would have a future market value of $1,354,540. This means that the homeowners would be required to repay back 10% of this value, which is a whopping $135,454. While this repayable amount is in future dollars, it'll still be a challenge to repay back, especially since the household would probably have just paid off their mortgage and would be getting close to retirement. The likely solution for this would be to use existing resources to sell or refinance the property. And hold on to this information because we're going to be continuing this example very shortly. The big benefit for this option is that homeowners would have a lower mortgage than if they didn't use the program. Also, CMHC fees would be reduced. The mortgage itself would be decreased by the 5 or 10% of the incentive. This would reduce the regular mortgage payments and total mortgage interest paid. So for example, a $400,000 home that did not use the incentive and had a 10% down payment and included CMHC fees would have approximate monthly payments of $1,853 a month, while a mortgage with a 10% incentive included would have a monthly payment of $1,642. So these payments would be over $200 less a month. If held for the full 25 years, the interest saved would be just under $21,000. This difference also includes a reduced CMHC fee. So unfortunately, after we do the math, some real big issues arise. What we actually see is that you will likely end up paying more money in the long run. So what's happening here is the amount that you have to repay back will be likely growing at a much faster rate than what you would save in mortgage interest and fees. The government's equity portion would grow by an increasing property value, while the mortgage interest would grow at a declining mortgage amount. While this is not always the case, it'll be a likely one. And this is where I recontinue the early example. The repayable incentive amount of $135,454 equates to $77,662 in today's dollars, using an inflation rate of 2.25%. So after we subtract the $40,000 incentive, you would have paid a premium of just over $37,500 in today's dollars. If you minus the interest savings of $21,000, you would have paid an extra $16,500 using this program, which is obviously quite a bit of money that can be used for other purposes. The good news is that there is a way to overcome this problem. If you pay the monthly mortgage payment amount that you would have incurred without the incentive, then you would be effectively overpaying your mortgage by over $200 a month. This would cause your mortgage amortization to shrink by over 4 years, and best of all, save an additional $30,000 in interest. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining. If you're enjoying the show, you can support us by rating or sharing the show with anyone that you think may benefit. You could also contact me at info@ffcoach.ca, or you can find me on Twitter at @F_Coach. Take care and talk to you soon.